Welcome to an all-new episode of the Work Shoot Wrestling Podcast. This is Corey Richmond, joined as always by Jason Brooks, the human wheelbarrow, the main event, and so much more that I've been paid to say at the moment. But Jay, how are you doing as we talk for the second time this week on the return of John Cena? Looks like the rumors were true that he'll be back for SummerSlam to face Roman Reigns. Talking a little bit about.
Well, we don't know if he's coming back for sure at SummerSlam to face Roman Reigns, but
We know, but we don't know. Let's just
that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, we'll start with that. He was on Jimmy Kimmel last night, and he told him that he would be returning. And we've known for quite a while from a lot of the quote unquote dirt sheets that the rumored plan is Roman Reigns versus John Cena at SummerSlam, and hopefully, if they can figure out the magic, Bobby Lashley versus Brock Lesnar at SummerSlam as your two main event matches, trying to make SummerSlam the secondary WrestleMania with fans back. Guess we'll start off right away. Jay, what's your thoughts of the return of the part-timers with live crowds, and especially John Cena, who is the quote unquote big star besides The Rock when it comes to Hollywood coming back?
Yeah, I think he brings. Sometimes these guys come back and it's like, ugh, whatever. But I think he brings a certain level of realism when he comes back in terms of his promos and things like that. I think he's really compelling when he comes back. Usually, I think he's generally a compelling character when he comes back. I thought the feud with him and Bray, I enjoyed their promos back and forth, and so I think they could make this really, really interesting. In terms of Cena coming back and how he talks to Reigns. I think they have a lot of potential, very interesting TV that they could make. So the match itself will be, not great, but the TV leading up to it, I think, is going to be very, very interesting. Also, when is Edge coming back, right? So there's a lot of things that they could put in place for SummerSlam. It's at the stadium, and the big stadium in Vegas. So we'll kind of see how that goes. But I'm looking forward to him coming back. I think since that US Open Challenge run, he basically has just been a putting people over machine, basically. So, and I think he's was on a great run then. And so, I'm looking forward to him coming back, actually.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see how this goes. If this is, him coming back for, one or two shows, SummerSlam and WrestleMania, that's great. If he helps put people over and he helps get people to come back and go and find that wrestling is cool again, which, it doesn't have the cool factor right now. Whatever, forgetting about ratings, I know I love to talk about, but it doesn't. For the first time on Monday, it felt like Raw was actually trying to care for a change. But, with Cena, possibly The Rock coming back for next year's WrestleMania, the casuals could come back, and Cena coming back, basically having a do-over of what happened the first time with him and Roman. Now Roman is this much bigger character and a lot more interesting of character. It'll be interesting to see their dynamic this time and how, it really works one way or another. If, he still has the passion to do this, or if he will be kind of like The Rock, who just wants to make sure he doesn't get hurt when he's doing it because he has this movie career.
Wow. Corey's not going to come in and make sure he doesn't get hurt. What does that even mean? Of course, he's going to come in and do the best he could do. He's not going to come in and half-ass it. I think he's going to come in. I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens with this character. We talked pre-show about, you were saying, oh, is he going to come back and do a bunch of shows? Like, no, he's not going to come back and do a bunch of shows. That seems crazy. That being said, The Rock did come back and do a whole program, but it was kind of revolving around WrestleMania, and that's why he won a title, so he could go against Cena. So maybe we see something like that with Cena, but I don't think it'll be SummerSlam. I mean, they want The Rock to come back for Survivor Series, so that's been out there. I think Cena has more of a one-off, and then he comes back maybe for WrestleMania. But with him doing all these movies and stuff, I mean, who knows? He's got a lot of stuff coming down the pipeline. And so, we'll see how it all works out. But I think, a one-off against Reigns here is what I'm expecting at SummerSlam. And then we'll see, depending on his schedule. I think a lot of it depends on his schedule. I think if he's has an open schedule at WrestleMania time, we'll definitely see him at WrestleMania, 100%.
I could definitely agree with that. I guess the other part that I'm wondering in regards to all this is, do you think the fans still care about Cena?
Yeah,
As
absolutely.
you do?
He's
Okay.
one of the biggest stars in the history of pro wrestling. Of course they do. And now he's been, I mean, he's parlayed his success in pro wrestling to being a pretty big star in Hollywood. I mean, I don't know how you measure that, but he's having a very successful run in Hollywood. He wouldn't be having this successful run in Hollywood if he was not a big star and people did not care about him.
Yeah, I can see that. Like I said, I always find it interesting when guys go away and they come back, and when we realize that it's just on the schedule that they can do. I just wonder how the fans will react to him. I always find that to be interesting. If it's more of like a respect now that he comes back, or is it still the fans wanting him to turn heel?
But I think that almost is what the respect is at this point, right? I think the respect factor is like they're booing him, like when Kurt Angle got the "You suck" chants. Like that's almost like out of respect. So yeah, I think it will be kind of a respect thing, I think, with him. And yeah, the fact that he's coming back after he's been in Hollywood and whatever, I think it could be very interesting. The plan eventually is to turn Roman Reigns into a big baby face. And Vince can't fucking hold himself with these storylines. And this Roman Reigns storyline's been quite a long one. So, is this the part where Cena comes in and does like a Hollywood Rock Goldberg story? We'll see how it goes. And is this the start of some type of Roman Reigns babyface turn?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. And like I said, at least now we know he is back, and it'll be interesting how they, when he comes back, if it'll be, will he be here for like 4 or 5 weeks leading up, or will he just be there, maybe for one promo, being basically like, leading from the interaction on Twitter that him, The Rock, and Roman Reigns have had. With, a couple of weeks ago, Roman Reigns said something to the effect that that Cena and Rock, if they know what's good for them, they shouldn't come back because I've basically replaced them. So I don't know if they'll just go based on like tweets or how exactly they'll get to this point. But that's the interest. I think that might be the most interesting of how.
Oh no, they're not gonna do. It's not gonna be a Twitter war and they just have a match. I mean, it's gonna be a story. I mean, it wouldn't make any sense to. Now they could talk about Twitter and reference it, but the story is gonna be. And also let's think about, from a TV rating standpoint, right? Like how this is about the network special, but it's also about TV. Does he wrestle on TV? Absolutely not. But is he going to be on TV and talking and leading up to the match? 100%.
Yeah, like I said, it'll be interesting to see where they go and how this all gets set up. But Jay, we usually talk about it every week, and we'll talk about it again this week because it's usually one of the best hours, or 2 hours now, on TV. We didn't. This Tuesday, we had another episode, which I think was pretty strong, not as strong as the last 2 weeks of NXT. But what was your thoughts on NXT? We got the dream match of O'Reilly versus Kushida. We got Frankie Monet with her second matchup, which, was a squash, but she's coming across, I think, as a star, at least in my eyes.
Absolutely.
What were your thoughts on the developments of the night? And we could save the big one, and the diamond in the rough.
Yeah, diamond mine. Yeah, I'll start off with that because that was the biggest thing. I think I'm looking forward to seeing what they could do with these three. I don't know the Japanese guy or Chinese guy.
Hideki Suzuki, I believe his name is.
Hideki Suzuki. So I don't know him at all. But obviously with Tyler Rust and with Roderick Strong, it's smart because you have Roderick Strong as the leader of the group, obviously a top wrestler, but not great on the mic. And then you have Stokely Hathaway. Is that his name? That's
his indie name.
That's his indie name. Yeah. So you have him. You have him who's going to be the mouthpiece, which I think is great. And then you have a couple of rising talents. Tyler Rust had a little run in Ring of Honor. He was really, really good. And I don't know this Japanese fellow, but obviously he's a developmental guy. So
Actually, he came in as a trainer, and he apparently was pretty. Because I don't know much about him as well, but everybody thought he was coming in to be a trainer, and then he got put into this group. Apparently, he's very good, and we'll see, what he adds, if he's the muscle of the group or
Okay.
how to do this. But I think
Okay.
it's really interesting
Yeah.
that we were all. I mean, many people had told us it wasn't going to be Tessa Blanchard, even though everybody's kept on thinking it was going to be. Even the WWE went to like certain sites, including Sean Ross Sapp and Fightful, and actually told them officially it's not going to be. But I think it's interesting the guys that they put in this group. And it's gonna be interesting to see how quickly this group either works or doesn't work. Because Malcolm Bivens is a great talker. Roderick is great in the ring. Do you have to have them, get the title off as Kushida and that be the guy to make this group look, big from the beginning? Or, how does this all work out?
Yeah, one of the things, in the rumor mill that was said, and it's funny how wrestling gets this reputation with rumor mills, yet we've heard 10 Ben Simmons trades in the last week, but Wojnarowski isn't like a rumor mill. Wojnarowski, everyone has a lot of respect for him, but Sean Rossap and Dave Meltzer, people, it's just so funny how wrestling's looked at. But one of the things that people have said is that they're, part of this group is there to kind of put over the cruiserweight division. And so, with Kushida, and I think Kushida's done a great job with the title. And so I think, maybe that's what we're going to see here. I don't know if that has to do anything with 205 Live or whatever, which I've never watched before, but, I don't see, I don't know, but yeah, I think, Roderick Strong and Kushida could be a very, very good match. You have him go against Tyler Rust initially, have him go against the muscle guy at some point. I think it's a great way to put Kushida over to get him involved. Great way to get Roderick Strong involved. Yeah, and they're a developmental brand, so they're still trying new things. And again, I love NXT and I love the stuff that they try. And so yeah, we'll see how this continues to develop for sure. But I think it's off to a pretty good start. We'll see where it continues to go.
Any thoughts on the actual show itself?
Yeah, I thought Adam Cole match I thought was interesting with the young guy there. I think he's still kind of developing a little bit, kind of developing who he is and who his character's supposed to be and things like that. But it's clear that they like him and that they think he's going to be a guy. I'm excited for the women's tag stuff. I think they're doing a nice job of putting over the women's tag titles. Yeah, so I think they did some nice things. The Karrion Kross stuff still I don't really totally get that. Is he a heel? Is he not a heel? He's beating up Pete Dunne. Like I don't really know what he is or what he's supposed to be. And I think they kind of have a little bit like Rhea Ripley on Raw. She has the title, but we don't really know who she's supposed to be. So I don't love those developments as much, but again, we've bashed Karrion Kross plenty of times in this show. Frankie Monet looked great. I'd love for her to be, obviously they're setting up for her to be in a group with Aaliyah, who's been in developmental for 20 years now, and Jessie Kamea, who I think they see a lot of potential in. I think she's, poor Aaliyah, man. She can get off the blocks.
Yeah, but she never gives up. She's there.
She's gotten a lot better, man. She's gotten a lot better. Mercedes and Xia Li, they're continuing that feud. So I like the rhythm of the show. I like where they're continuing to go with the show.
Am I the only one though when that backstage thing? And well, just 2 seconds. I just find it funny. Am I the only one when you saw that backstage segment with Xia and Mercedes Martinez had no idea that Jake Atlas was the person to make the save until they came back afterwards and put the graphic up for next week?
I knew that was him.
Really?
Right when they showed him. He wears when a lot of times they show him in backstage vignette, he's wearing glasses. So yeah, I knew that's who it was.
Okay, I was like,
I mean, you couldn't tell when he first kicked him because his back was turned, but yeah, I knew that instantly.
Okay. Now the last thing on NXT, at least for me this week, we spoke about it on our previous show this past Monday, was that it had come out that both Cross and Bronson Reed were basically being looked at for the main roster. And Dave Meltzer has said that they both tape matches for main event this week. Now, this isn't the first time that NXT people have been on main event, and I'm sure it won't be the last time. But what's your thoughts on it? Went from just being a tryout match, and if it doesn't air, then Dave Meltzer got misinformation, and they just decided to scrap. But what's your thoughts on your two male champions being on main event this week in kind of a nondescript setting?
I mean,
I don't know if it's just to hide them and but still have it on tape. But what's on your thoughts on that?
I don't know why they're a main event. I think that's weird. Maybe they just need to fill time in main event. So I think that part is strange and interesting. In terms of what it means, I don't think it means anything, except for the idea, and we talked about this last week, that we think eventually they're going to push, Reed and Cross, and they'll be two of the next big guys that come up to NXT. And, so I think that's what we see at some point. And I think they're prepping them and getting them ready.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Like I said, if it does happen, it will be Karrion Kross versus Shelton Benjamin and Reed versus Gulak, which are two really good guys for them to each face to make them look great. So I don't know if I'll have the time to check out, how the matches happen and if they'll be any good, but, it's at least, now that I know it, there's more than a 1% chance than the 0% chance that I've ever watched main event, since it's been on. So it'll be interesting to see how those matches they do happen, come about.
Yeah, no, I agree. It'll be interesting to see where things go.
So Jay broke the streak this past week. I guess he had heard that there was no NBA playoffs on, so he actually sat through a Monday Night Raw. He actually picked one that actually wasn't bad. We had the Money in the Bank qualifying matches. Ricochet beat AJ Styles. Asuka and Naomi beat Doudrop and Eva Marie. John Morrison beat Randy Orton. Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross, who's a superhero now, defeated Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler, and it was...
You're certainly not selling me on this show the way you're describing it here. It does sound like it was not a good show, but we promise you it was solid.
And Riddle defeated Drew McIntyre, which I am super surprised that Riddle got, a clean win, and it's going to be interesting what they do with Drew McIntyre, if they actually take him away from this title picture for a while, or if he sneaks in as the last guy, because they're going to have basically a loser's bracket next week with Orton versus AJ versus Drew McIntyre for the final spot on Raw for Money in the Bank. So what were your thoughts after, taking a little break from the S show known as Monday Night Raw and actually checking it out for the first time in a while?
Yeah, I mean, this will probably be the last time for a little while, to be honest with you.
Back on Monday.
It's like the Homer Simpson, like walking in the door and then walking right out the door.
Grandpa Simpson.
Yeah, I thought it was. I thought it was fine. I thought the Riddle match was really good. I thought overall it was a solid show, and I think they're trying to make this Kofi and Bobby Lashley thing mean something, even though we know Lashley's going to keep the title. But I think that they're trying to do something, and I'm enjoying their interaction. I think they actually set it up a couple of weeks ago, which they never set anything up weeks in advance. So I thought the show was solid. I didn't get the Charlotte Flair, supposedly Rhea's breaking the rules, so now she's being disciplined. But like
regular match,
heels break the rules all the time, and like they don't need to come out. So like that didn't make a lot of sense to me. So it still wasn't great. Like it wasn't great. It was just fine. If you watch the show, you'd be like, oh, that's a slight improvement over what we've seen in the past. But the Nikki Cross thing, God bless her. She hasn't been released. I mean,
well, the one thing I'm just going to interrupt you on that. I don't know if you know about this, but it was Nikki Cross actually put online on Twitter after the show that it was her idea for the angle. So that's the only thing that gives me slight hope on the idea. When it's something that you come up with as a performer, you're going to try your hardest to make it work. It's not something that's just given to you. So I'm not going to kill. We always, when we see this type of stuff, we just kill creative and like, this is what they gave this.
Oh, I'm not necessarily killing creative. I'm just killing whatever it. I just don't get it.
The
The problem is it's fine like these things are fine to do. The problem is they're not long-term stories. She's not
Mhm.
going to be a superhero for 2 years. You know what I mean?
Hopefully
You
not.
know, but Shane Helms did it and he was very successful with the Hurricane. So, I mean, I guess shit, anything could happen, right? And he's still the Hurricane on the independent scene. So, I mean, who knows? Maybe things could work out for her. She's, I mean, again, you know how I feel about her. She's uber talented. And she seems like a really sweet person. And so we'll see. I thought the pairing with her and Alexa was interesting. But yeah, so it's still a little bit of Alexa Bliss, voodoo stuff and superpowers stuff. So I don't know. I thought the show was fine. I still think at the end of the day, the show doesn't seem to have a real direction. And I think that's the biggest problem. It seems like they're just making shit up on the fly and stuff's just happening. I'll say this too. The Riddle, Randy Orton stuff, you know what? Not bad. It's not bad. Riddle is a little bit too stupid sometimes to me. Not like Soner stupid, like stupid. Um, but I think the stuff with him and Orton is not terrible. I don't think it's written great, but I think it has potential to be great because the two of them have funny reactions to each other. So who knows what they make of that. Jackson Riker, you know how I feel about him. He's a racist scumbag.
Yep.
But
Gotta get it. That was an odd segment. You
yeah,
have two minorities having to sit in the background watching some weirdo who, even if you don't know what stuff he said, smacking himself with a belt. A white guy with a belt
who's a baby face.
who's a baby face with two.
Like how does he I mean that's even more whatever, but like how does he have a job and they've released these other guys
Yeah.
who were better in the ring? Like I don't I don't understand it. You're a publicly traded company, you release people for anything, but then you keep certain people. It's very, very strange. But yeah, so that he does nothing for me. So I think overall the show had some good moments. And Jason Powell said this on ProWrestling.net. They had matches that actually had some meaning behind it. And I think that's what made the show a little bit better as well. It wasn't just pointless matches to have pointless matches.
I guess last thing I'll ask you about Raw before we move on, because it's the first time you've watched it. What was your thoughts, if any, of Jimmy Smith as being the lead announcer? Did he feel like he knew what he was doing? Did you even notice he was there? I mean, what would you say about? I mean, I think it's like week 3.
Yeah, mostly nondescript. Like I didn't think he was bad, and I think Saxton and Corey Graves are doing a really good job of
Filling in the
like
hole.
they did with Adnan. Well, Adnan, they basically were the broadcasters, and he would just be there in the background. Whereas I feel like they're doing a good job of making it like the three of them, they're all kind of like weaving in. Where Corey Graves is still more the analyst, but Sexton, as much as we rip Sexton, he is doing a good job of helping Smith, helping this guy through. So I think he's been fine. I don't think he's been bad. I also heard him on the pay-per-view. So I've heard him. He's fine.
I didn't get a chance to ask you on Monday because I was
Yeah. I think he's been fine. So yeah, don't ask me about Raw next week because I won't be watching.
I'll have to look at the calendar and see what games are on that day. But so let's see. AEW on Saturday, which we spoke about briefly on Monday, has their final show before coming back to Wednesday nights. It'll be this Saturday. We've got the Jungle Boy versus Kenny Omega match, the biggest match in Jungle Boy's career. I'm sure that AEW will have a Road to show to pump it up on YouTube, which of course will never see the light of day if you don't get off the internet. How's your feeling on a couple days away from AEW on their final show? And what's your thoughts on this, how this match has been built?
I think it's been fine. I think Omega has gotten better on the mic, and he has moments where he's like still really pretty good, and moments where like he's not super convincing. And so I don't think he's been at his best. But I think he usually needs a good person to play off of, Moxley, for instance, and whatever. And it's also better when Callis is doing more of the talking and Omega kind of throws in there. And Jungle Boy, you can't talk his way out of a paper bag. So I think the build's been fine, but I'm glad they've given it build. I'm glad they've given it a kind of a chance to shine. Clearly, they see Jungle Boy as like, you know, he's a good-looking young kid, young white kid. That's important. He's a good-looking young white kid. The girls like him. He's got his own theme song. You know, clearly he's a guy that they're going to push. So I expect to see a good competitive match with him losing in the end. And I think the bill's been solid.
All right. Any other subjects you want to talk about the main groups that you want to get?
No, I think Paige and Hobbs has potential to be a really good match. I want to see where they go with that, and in terms of continuing the storyline of Paige not wanting to talk about the AEW World Title and where they go with that. So they're trying to build this Saturday Night Dynamite as like a big pay-per-view light, and so we'll see if we'll see where they go and what other matches they have on this card.
Very cool. So Jay, we've reached the time of the show where we do a couple of plugs and let people know how they could find us and everything else. So you want to take care of that as usual?
Sure. So we are on Twitter and Instagram at Worked Shoot Pod. We are Worked Shoot Wrestling Podcast. We're in iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. So yeah, check us out on all those platforms. We're also part of the Great Life Group podcast. Corey usually puts it in here in the chat for me, and he did not. So I don't remember all the shows.
On Monday.
Dong City is on Monday with Henry and Vince. Tuesday is the football show, The Audible, with Matt and Randy.
Was somebody else on that show this week?
Corey made a little special appearance. I don't, Corey's football knowledge and my football knowledge, it's like 1 to 10. But fine, I wasn't invited, no big deal. I'm just a little bit hurt. So that's a football show. Wednesday, Step Back with Jacob and Leon.
Actually, that's Friday.
Friday's a Step Back with Jacob and Leon. I'm just getting buried here. Sunday is Felipe and Sean with their baseball show.
Total Bases, fantasy baseball.
Total Bases, and then we're usually on Thursday.
Yes, we are.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good off the top here. So yeah, Life Group Podcast. Subscribe. Watch them on Facebook. Corey was on this week on the football podcast. They probably just talked about Cleveland because that's the only team he really knows about. So I'm sure that it was a good show. They figure they bring up the rear here with the fact that there's not much going on right now.
Yes, we did an AFC North preview.
Okay.
And to be honest, I still picked the Ravens to win the division as a Browns fan. I still can't believe that the hype is truly real.
No, you guys it's not about the hype being real. You guys went to the playoffs and won a game. David DeCastro retired today. Looks like he might retire.
Oh, I know he got released. I know he retired. That's interesting.
He might retire. He got released because of the injuries.
Gotcha. But Jay, we usually talk about another podcast, but I just want to do a quick thing. Former guest of the podcast and friend in real life, Brian Drake, actually did the 100th episode of the Fantasy Football Hustle podcast. Congratulations to him, and you should, of course, go back and check that out, unless you're in a football league with me, because I use all the help I can get. So if you're not in my league, don't listen, but everyone else, be sure to listen to Brian Drake's great podcast. Congratulations on a 100th episode. But Jay, there's a podcast that we talk about every week that you feel like you should be on, everyone, but you know what that one is?
You don't know Jackie. You don't know Jackie. Jackie Andy, Jackie Rachel, Jackie Corey, the comedy podcast for the ages.
Very cool. And same plug as, Monday, we're going to have we just had part 1 of the wonderfully overrated show from the 90s called Friends, and talked about how much we love living single instead, a show that started a year before, and unfortunately was made to go straight up against it. And that show lasted 5 years, and the other one was allowed to last for 10. But you'll hear a lot of interesting comments. And if you stay till the end, you'll hear the musings of the human wheelbarrow and maybe a little bit more singing. Do you want to sing for us again?
No, I'm good. No, thank you.
All right. So our last subject of the day, a little bit shorter show than usual, unless we continue to talk, and that might happen. The Asian on Asian podcast, which I'll be honest, before today, I had no idea existed. I'm sure they do a great show. You can check them out wherever you podcast. But they had stand-up comedian Kenice Mobley on the show. Now, if you
Kenice. I think it's Kenice.
Kenice, I'm sorry, Kenice Mobley on the show. And I'll be honest, why are we talking about her? Well, she apparently is one of the newest writers for Monday Night Raw. Now, of course, they hire people all the time, and some know wrestling, some don't. But most of them don't go on podcasts and usually tell people that they're either on at the time or have, the kind of comments that she said. So, Jay, I sent you the comments in the chat, so you had a chance to look.
Yeah, so I'm not going to read this quote by quote because reading comments it's awful. Essentially, she said, "I'm on the Raw team. She didn't know Bobby Lashley's name, and so she doesn't know much about wrestling. Essentially, she's like, I don't know shit about wrestling, and I'm a wrestling writer. So this leads to a big thing, right? A bigger thing of having writers on the show who are not wrestling fans, don't know anything about wrestling, never knew anything about wrestling. I do not think you have to watch Raw or watch SmackDown to be a wrestling writer. I think it would have been a good idea if you watched wrestling as a kid, at least, to kind of understand the rhythm of how things go. But here's the thing about her. So I looked her up while we were doing the show. Mm-hmm. She's African-American, and she's female, and she's a comedy writer. Those are three things that WWE desperately needs, right?
Absolutely.
They need more people of color. They absolutely need more females, and they need writers who are actually like funny. So I think her being there is a really, really good thing. I think, to me, what a writer is, writing lines for guys and guys and gals, I think it's all really, really tricky. I mean, you look at AEW, you look at Miro and how he's developed his character over time and how much better he's gotten. You look at Orange Cassidy, same thing, how much he's continued to grow his character and where he is. And these people have developed their characters like pretty organically. And so part of me is like, in general, like they don't need writers. Then there's the idea that they have all these hours of programming every week. And so maybe they need some help. I do think about it with AEW where Tony Khan, I guess, does a lot of what, before it seemed like it was going to be a collaborative effort, but Tony Khan seems like he's very, 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 very involved in everything. Mm-hmm. Where it seemed like he was more the money guy and also was involved with stuff. It seems like he's kind of the Vince McMahon of AEW. So it's interesting that he doesn't have writers. He's basically letting the wrestlers kind of do their stuff on their own. So I don't know. I think the bigger thing for me is the fact she doesn't know about wrestling. I don't care about that. Who cares? I think it's more the fact that why is there a need for writers? I guess that'd be my biggest thing. Why is there a need for writers? Why are they not? They have Bruce Pritchard there, Michael. These same guys who have been there for like years and years and years. Bring new people in, bring new voices in who maybe have a background in wrestling. Mark Henry talked about this on his podcast. He said he wanted to he'd be a perfect guy. Make him one of the head bookers of Raw. He's been a wrestler for years. African-American guy. Has been up and down with this stop and starts with different factions and different things he's been in. Make him a big part of the show. Instead, he goes to AEW. So it's, but now we still got Bruce Pritchard there. Don't worry. He's going to solve everything. So I don't think she's the problem. I think what WWE continues to do the same thing, Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. Having writers who don't know anything about wrestling and not having other people there to kind of help them through. Yeah, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
I can see that. And she put on her Miss Mobley put on her Twitter on June 14th, and I believe she was saying this, kiddingly, but she goes, "So excited to start my wrestling job. Maybe someone will finally tell me what a heel is. I don't know."
Corey, she's a comedy writer. She's a comedy writer. We don't have to read all. She's a comedy writer. That's her thing. Even that podcast, when I read the Bobby Lashley quote, she clearly was being funny. Clearly, she was like, you could tell by the way she said it, she was busting balls. Now, she doesn't know a lot about Raw. That's clear, or wrestling in general, but she also was being kind of tongue-in-cheek and funny about it. So, man, wrestling fans are so like
uptight, protective.
Oh my Jesus Christ. It's scripted professional wrestling.
And the line of the day is, of course, from the biggest Jason Stan who's ever lived, from the You Don't Know Jackie podcast. Jackie Endy wrote, "I want to look for a WWE writing job now." After we may have had
she's the wheelbarrow of your show. Certainly you should not be applying for a job, Corey.
Agreed. I want to be able to complain about it and not get fired.
Yeah. So you are a much more uptight wrestling fan than I am when it comes to certain stuff, I feel like. So again, I don't mind that she's there. I just don't think they really need writers. But they do need more women, and they definitely need more, people of color. So, it's kind of 1A and 1B.
Yeah, I agree. They should definitely have more female influence on the product, especially when you have a whole division of women, and the idea of men writing about women, I think, is not, at times, a different perspective, fine, but you should have someone who actually has lived and experienced things, So like just same thing when you had, I'm sorry, I forgot his name, but when the New Day was starting to get super over and you had the big Kofi push, one of the people who was writing a lot of their materials was an African-American guy who actually understood what made the New Day tick and made their stuff interesting and felt real and not just something that were, reading scripted lines.
Yeah.
And, I know that I think at one point with Impact, you had Chrissy Hemme was part of, the writing team for the women. And you could say maybe that's the reason why they got a little bit better at one point. You never know for sure, how much power she had if it was more of a figurehead. Isn't just saying that we have, unlike Raw, we have women there. So, I could see that. Did the comments truly bother me? Not really. I just thought it was something interesting, to talk about. I haven't listened. Like I said, I just saw the quotes. I didn't hear context of what she said, but it is very interesting and she's very honest, where she said, I needed a job. They offered this to me. What am I, stupid? I'm going to say no to them paying me, I don't know if it was 6 figures or high five or whatever it was. But, they offered me a job. Basically, I'll figure it out as we go along. And, and the things that they consider comedy in that company usually aren't funny to begin with. So if you have somebody who may actually know comedy, in the past, you had former guests on the podcast, Jay Washington worked as a writer for the WWE at one point. So, you've had people in the comic field write stuff in the past. So, this could be a good thing, or this could be just, she might be someone who's there for, 6 months, like a lot of people, and washes out, or she could be a really interesting voice that brings change. I'm not trying to make this, a political podcast here, but, sometimes you need different voices to explain what's really going on. You can't have, I don't care if it's a white male, whatever you want to say, white woman. Sometimes you just need different voices in the room to go and explain what's working and not working.
It's not, and I do get annoyed when you say, "Oh, I don't want to get political." Like, we're not getting political. It's good for Black people to write lines for other Black people, and also how can they connect to the Black audience or the Latinx audience or the female audience. So it's not about politics. It makes sense to have someone who has that lived experience. You know what I mean?
I agree.
Yeah. So,
like I said, I hope that this is just a blip on the radar, and she's with the company for the next 10 years if she wants to be there, or the 10 months, however long. Usually people don't last in that job forever. Let's be honest.
Her over under is like a year. I think I'm going. I think the over. Yeah, I'm going with the under's like minus 200. Like it's a dead nut under for sure. But good for her. she'll be doing that for a little bit, a way to get, and like, listen, a lot more people know about her now than knew about her before, right? So good for her, man.
Hey, she got herself over, as is sometimes very hard to do. I mean, maybe this wasn't on purpose, but people know who she is now. People might go, look at her other stuff, and we'll see how that goes. But Jay, another interesting show. But there is one other thing I wanted to talk about, and this is a little bit of something we have an interview lined up. Somebody who's a friend of the podcast, who you introduced me to. Would you like to let people know what we have in the cooker for later on this week? We'll be
Oh
dropping.
yeah, we're interviewing my buddy Carl. He's better known in Ring of Honor as Rocco. Carl is in the Ring of Honor dojo. He does the ring crew stuff too. So and kind of he's just kind of grinding his way, trying to make his way in pro wrestling. So we're going to talk to him a little bit about his experience with Ring of Honor, his experience with trying to make it in pro wrestling, and also talk about how Ring of Honor handled their restart during the pandemic. So really interesting interview, really interesting look at someone who hasn't yet made it, but is trying to make it, and what that journey is like for him.
And if you want to check out Rocco, you can check out at Rocco Told You So on Twitter and Instagram. And like I said, we'll have that drop either later on today or tomorrow. So check out for that. But Jason, as always, the final word will be yours. Hopefully the NBA can figure out two teams that everybody wants to watch. It's going to be interesting to see how this all works out with these four remaining teams.
I'm excited. I think we're done here. See ya.